India, they account in the world. Women account for almost 70% of the new infections of HIV, and this is growing. In 1998, Ellen Matt wrote, HIV infection is now common in India. Exactly what the prevalence is not really known, but it can be stated without fear of being wrong that infection is widespread. It is spreading rapidly to those segments that society in India does not recognize as being at risk. AIDS is coming out of the closet. That was in 1998, and 10 years later, that statement is more true than ever. AIDS is running at a pandemic rate. One of the reasons why many people are so complacent about AIDS, assuming they don't have it, is it's such an individualistic infection. And people try and keep it quiet, and it is a big shame that no one wants to have it. There are many drugs now that can treat AIDS, but those drugs are expensive. This data here was taken on the internet, part of our research, as we don't eat country. 5.7 million adults and children living with HIV/AIDS. 5 million adults, 1.6 million children. Now these numbers don't have to be accurate for the number, but the size of the problem is indicated. Adult HIV prevalence is estimated at slightly under 1%. Future predictions for AIDS in India. India's adult HIV prevalence will peak at 1.9% in 2019. Of course, that is just a prediction. Economic growth in India will slow by almost a percentage point per year as a result of AIDS by 2019. Now, I'll give you another very frightening statistic. UNAIDS predicts that by 2020, 90 million Africans will die of AIDS. Now, you can only have a nightmare guess as to how many people will be infected. Now we talk about how many people will die of AIDS, and that's a very bad thing because none of us want to die. But in looking at the clinical results of AIDS, how it devastates the human spirit and the body, how it robs you of your dignity. Sometimes death is almost a release. Once you see a baby born with AIDS, you will never be the same. I went to the baby AIDS ward at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, the public hospital, to take a look at how AIDS babies exist. How do they fare? They scream all the time. There is no relief to them. They literally scream themselves to death. Future predictions for AIDS in India: 1980 to 2000, 2.7 million deaths. We can quantify that and know how many people approximately have died of AIDS. 2000 to 2015, 12.3 million. 2015 to 2050, 49,500,000. Now, just from these predictions, we can see how devastating this disease is. In the United States, I personally know 3 people who have died of AIDS. That's a lot of people to know. So that tells me what the prevalence is in the United States. Future predictions for AIDS in India continue.
Whatever the exact figures turn out to be, it's clear that HIV and AIDS will have a devastating effect on India in the future, and that as much as possible needs to be done to minimize this impact. Now we come to the India AIDS Plan. The India AIDS Plan focuses on stopping the spread of AIDS at its main source, those persons infected with HIV/AIDS, and educating them on how to prevent their transmitting AIDS to others. At the present time, almost all of the plans around the world focus on educating the masses. They tell us that if everyone knows about AIDS, we'll be able to stop AIDS. And possibly this is true, possibly. But I did some research and some comparisons on AIDS awareness. And I found that Australia has one of the highest literacy rates in the world. It also has one of the best communication systems in the world. Whereas the Republic of Niger in West Africa has a fairly high illiteracy rate and not nearly the advanced communication system that Australia has. Yet, both countries are experiencing relatively the same rate of increase in new AIDS infections. That tells me that education alone or awareness alone may not be doing what we needed to do. And I say may not because no one knows exactly how these plans are going to work in the future. But we can look at some indicators and see. Educating 1 to 2%, that's okay, don't worry, of the population on how not to give AIDS to others is more plausible than educating 1 billion people on how not to contract AIDS. There are so many different educational levels and all the different barriers that if we can encapsulate AIDS within the environment that it already exists. Now this is not really a new concept, it's just being applied to AIDS. Tuberculosis was conquered in the United States by putting every person that had tuberculosis in a sanitarium, isolating them from the general population. Now it's not possible for us to build sanitariums for everyone that has HIV. So we take the same concept and we sit down with the person that has HIV and we retrain them not to spread it. So the question came up, why would somebody who has HIV care about whether or not they give to someone else? Well, there's a very good self-serving reason. You have HIV and you have not gone into AIDS, full-blown AIDS. You get a second virus, which is different from the first virus, because each HIV/AIDS virus mutates and takes on its individual characteristics. You get a second virus, your immune system is going to be overwhelmed. It's already battling an uphill fight against one virus. So when you explain to a person with HIV, listen, I'm going to train you how not to give AIDS, I'm going to train you how not to get a second virus, and I'm going to equip you with something that will help you prevent transmitting the AIDS virus. How can AIDS be stopped? We've spoken about education, and education is very, very, very important. But I want to combine education with technology. In almost every area of our society, we use technology to either advance ourselves to prevent something, polio, other diseases. We use antibiotics to treat, anti-cancer drugs, and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, in the AIDS war, we need to introduce technology. The buzzword now is called microbicides. But when I started in 1995, that word wasn't used very much. We call them this